Welcome, Game Chasers everywhere, to episode 21 of The Collecting Confidant with your host, GunstarHero. And I'm back this week with another classic, in fact, a remaster of a PC classic. This week, we're going to dive deep into Day of the Tentacle Remastered, which is now available for physical pre-order on the PS4, Xbox One, and PC, courtesy of www.limitedrungames.com. And that pre-order window is now open until Sunday, September the 4th, 2022 at the standard limited run deadline of 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we've got a few weeks to think about it. In the meantime, we're going to talk about the game, its development history, and some of the physical versions. This game, the remastered version, originally came out back in March of 2016 for PC, Mac, PS4, PS Vita. Later in July of that year, it got a Linux and iOS port, and then in October of 2020, finally got released on the Xbox One. Now, this game, of course, is a remaster of the original Day of the Tentacle, which was developed and published by LucasArts back in June of 1993. It came out on Mac and Windows, and this is a classic point-and-click adventure game in the vein of other classics like Space Quest, King's Quest, Monkey Island, and of course my personal favorite from my childhood, Leisure Suit Larry, because I was a little horn dog and I like to play adult video games behind my parents' back, but that's beside the point. This is a classic point-and-click adventure game that was a sequel to Maniac Mansion, which came out also from LucasArts back in 1987 and then later got ported to the NES. This is one of my earliest NES memories, and this was special at the time because I was really huge into the Leisure Suit Larry games at the time, and also Space Quest, all of those classic Sierra Adventure graphic games. But at the time, you didn't really see a lot of those games on console, so seeing something like that on the NES squeezed down was very cool, and it still remains like a cult classic to this day, even though it's got its problems. There are definitely problems with Maniac Mansion in terms of the fact that there are dead ends in the game where if you mess up, you can actually corrupt your game, and if you're lucky, you happen to save somewhere in the past where you can get back into your game. Otherwise, it's kind of a frustrating experience where characters can die and you can make mistakes that you can't reverse. Luckily, the sequel ironed all that out, and we'll get into that while we're talking about the development history. So, back to the game of Day of the Tentacle. This game was originally released in 1993, and the plot is pretty funny. So it carries on from the original Maniac Mansion, where Dr. Fred, who was a main character in the previous games, he is now created, of course, these tentacles, and this one purple tentacle happens to drink from a river that was polluted by the sludge that Dr. Fred put into it. So now after drinking this sludge, the tentacle becomes aggressive, as he so-called puts it. I thought that was hilarious, and becomes hell-bent on taking over the world. So basically now you got these three characters, Bernard, Hoagie, and Laverne, who have to team up through time and space to stop the purple tentacle from taking over the world. And of course, a lot of hilarity and irreverent stuff is going to take place over the course of the game. And really, I am usually pretty hard on video game humor. I'm very critical of it. It's usually hit or miss. This game had me laughing out loud and giggling uncontrollably at like 2 in the morning. So bona fide, hilarious. The writing still holds up to this day, and I have to commend the developers for that. But back to the game. So of course, if you're not familiar, let's say you're a little bit younger, you didn't play those old point-and-click games of yesteryear, all you really do is you have all these commands at the bottom of the screen, like push, pull, open, walk to, use, and you use those commands in conjunction with in-game objects and characters to, solve puzzles, have the dialogue go through, and push the narrative forward. And of course, if you're not familiar with these games, there's a lot of trial and error, and for those of you who aren't used to them, you could probably get frustrated with sometimes how obtuse the clues can be. Overall, I found Day of the Tentacle to be a lot better than Maniac Mansion in that regard. It was a lot more streamlined, but I will admit that I had to use a strategy guide a few times. Overall, most of the clues are pretty easy to figure out if you just pay attention to the dialogue, or you just have that extra time to play around with the commands, different world objects, combine them in different ways. You'll figure out most of this on your own, but then there's some puzzles that admittedly were a little bizarre, and I got stuck. So don't feel bad if you have to consult a strategy guide. In fact, this is one of the criticisms of the game, especially the remastered, that it doesn't have an in-game hint system to help younger players get through it, but it's not too bad, and for the most part, you'll figure it out. So going back to the game itself, You've got the point-and-click adventure system, and it also works through time, which I think for the time at 1993, this must have been very innovative. And from a game design perspective and a storytelling perspective, where the fact that all three characters are stuck in different time zones, so they can interact through time and space by sharing objects, for example, through their time machine, which is actually just a porta potty. It's called the Chronojon, with a toilet that you can flush objects down and pass them to other players through time and space. But then you can also take objects, leave them in the past, that can be then picked up by another character in the future, or they can mature into a different status. I found that truly captivating, and I will admit, you can hear from what I'm saying, I never played this game back in the day. I never really had a PC that was powerful enough to handle this at the time this came out, and I was more of a console gamer, so this is all fresh to me. And for it to still remain fresh this day and hilarious is a testament to the game's design and philosophy. So some other cool points about the game: the original 1993 version, this was the final game to use LucasArts' SCUM system, which is actually short for Script Creation Utility for Maniac Mansion, and that essentially translates into all the commands at the bottom of the screen: the pick up, open, use. That was the SCUM system, right? It was the last game to use that before they moved on to different user interfaces, but it was also a game of many firsts. Not only was it the first game to use complete and total voiceover, this was unprecedented at the time, and because of the game's huge file size, to truly appreciate the game as the developers intended, you had to play this on CD-ROM. Even though the PC version came with a floppy disk, you had to play it on CD-ROM to truly get all the voices and the graphics, so that was another first for the game. Let's talk about the development history now. So the game itself was co-developed by Tim Shafer, who you'll better know as the founder of Double Fine Productions, responsible for games like Psychonauts, Costume Quest, Broken Age. He was the main driving force along with his comrade Dave Grossman, and the two had previously worked together on the Monkey Island games for LucasArts, and that's where LucasArts said, okay, these guys are really funny when they're together. They wanted to do a sequel to Maniac Mansion, so they thought it'd be appropriate to bring these guys on as the leads, and this was actually Tim Shafer's first game that he was the co-lead on. What was nice about this too is that they actually co-wrote the script with the original co-developers of Maniac Mansion. That would of course be none other than Ron Gilbert and Gary Whittick. You'd know them better as the makers of the Monkey Island series, and they also worked on Thimbleweed Park. So the four gentlemen worked on the script for this together, and between Tim Shafer and Dave Grossman introduced a lot of quality of life enhancements from the original Maniac Mansion. Most notably, they got rid of the gameplay dead ends, they got rid of the character deaths, made it way more streamlined, and in terms of streamlining even further, Maniac Mansion had a lot of selectable characters that you could do different combinations of friends to solve the game, whereas Dave the Tentacle just has three main characters. You got Bernard the Nerd, who is a holdover from the original Maniac Mansion, and the reason why they brought him over was because he was the most popular, like, fan favorite character. In addition, he's joined by Laverne, who's like this weird, twisted lab student who carries around a scalpel and is based off of Grossman's Mexican ex-girlfriend. And of course, you have the most hilarious character, in my opinion, Hoagie, who is the overweight stoner roadie, based off of an actual Megadeth roadie that Tim Shafer met in real life, and was actually voiced by Danny Delk of the Monkey Island series. And I want to stop here for a second because the voice talent was very effective in this game. You've got, of course, Bernard, the main character, voiced by Richard Sanders, who's better known as Les Nessman on WKRP in Cincinnati. You've also got the voice of Dr. Fred by Mick Jameson, who played the Russian president on the show 24. So you've got a lot of all-star voice talent, but then a lot of ambition done with the graphics and sound as well, which is truly the star of the show, and heavily inspired by Looney Tunes of Warner Brothers fame. And if you know me personally, you'll know that I am obsessed with Looney Tunes. I love the old Bugs Bunny cartoons. I still laugh at them to this day. And honestly, in my opinion, that is why this game is so funny, because it's based off of not only the music by Carl Stalling, but the visual style was directly inspired by Chuck Jones and Morris Noble. Specifically, they credit the cartoons What's Opera Doc, Rabbit of Seville, and Duck Dodgers the 24th half of the century as direct inspirations for the style, and Chuck Jones was even brought in as a consultant for the art style, which I think is just so cool, and it shows in the quality of the visuals and the sound, which again, still hold up to this day. So then you've got this game, comes out in 1993, wins a whole bunch of awards, is on all these massive like all-time games lists, has this loving legacy, and then eventually it was supposed to get a remastered around 2012. You had LucasArts Singapore that was working on the project, had it about 80% done, and then unfortunately Disney bought out LucasArts, so the program got scrapped, sat in the ether for a couple of years. So then fast forward to 2014, Tim Shafer comes on stage at the PlayStation Experience and announces that his new company, Double Fine Productions, is going to be handling the remastered version of Day of the Tentacle. And apparently this was kind of a miracle that this got done, because at the time, Tim Shafer was trying to get the rights back from LucasArts to Grim Fandango and figured, why don't I just go all in and get the rights to Day of the Tentacle as well? Somehow he got the rights. They worked on the game, put it out in 2016, and the rest is history. Now, quickly, let's talk about the differences between the remastered version and the original. The biggest thing you'll notice, and you can actually watch a behind-the-scenes documentary about this, was that the visuals were completely overhauled from the original artwork. So they actually got the keys to the castle. Tim Shafer and his team actually went to the Skywalker Ranch, got access to all the original artwork, the original DAT tapes that had all the voiceovers. They remastered all the audio, all the visuals, and they look beautiful on modern PC and consoles. But then even better than that, for all historical buffs, is that at the touch of a button, you can switch between the 1993 mode and the 2016 mode. And then even further to that, you can go in and do mix and match. So you can play the game with maybe the original audio and the new graphics, or vice versa. You can choose to keep the old SCUM system at the bottom of the screen, or go with the new updated user interface, which uses, instead of commands at the bottom of the screen, now uses a control wheel, which was inspired by the work on Broken Age, making it a lot more simplified and streamlined. So I love the improvements. The only thing I wish is that they'll eventually go back and remaster this game again for modern consoles, give it like a 4K update, maybe put out for the Switch. And then I did play the PS4 version on the PS5, and I noticed that the load times were kind of excruciating, so I'm hoping that they'll fix that. But otherwise, a fantastic remaster. And on top of that, the best part is if you've never played the original Maniac Mansion, it is included. A port of the PC is playable on Dr. Fred's son's computer. It has its own save state, and that is utterly fantastic from a historical point of view. So lots of love in this. Again, my only gripe really is that some of the puzzles by today's standards are a little obtuse and require a strategy guide to get through them. If you're not great at puzzles like me, I'm kind of stupid sometimes, so I needed a bit of help. But I was able to complete most of the game without a guide, and it didn't matter because the game was so funny, so charming. The voiceovers were incredible, and like I said, I'm a nut for Looney Tunes and Chuck Jones, so seeing that visual and audio style as a nod to those old cartoons was fantastic. So now let's get into the physical version, which again is open for pre-order now via www.limitedrungames.com until Sunday, September the 4th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can get the physical version on either PS4, Xbox One, or a big box PC version. For the standard version, you can only get that on console for $34.99 US on PS4 or Xbox One. Again, pretty standard, gonna have the manual and the disc, but then you can also get the collector's version for $84.99 US, and that's gonna include a few other goodies like the soundtrack, a reversible poster, a tentacle flag, a microwavable hamster hand warmer, which is a nice in-joke from the games, fake barf, and then on top of that, there will be a big box PC version also for $84.99 US, which is going to include all the goodies from the console collector's version, in addition to a USB key shaped like a purple tentacle with a duplicate copy of the game, in addition to the regular disc version for your PC. So a lot of value for that price tag. You can get that for open pre-order now on limitedrungames.com. So I definitely recommend this for classic PC gamers who love the old Sierra period, love the old LucasArts period, for fans of like Monkey Island, Maniac Mansion. If you're into those kind of out of the box, lateral thinking, point and click adventure titles, there's a lot to love here. The humor holds up well. The graphics are awesome with very minimal gripes. I highly recommend this. You've been watching episode 21 of The Collecting Confidant. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode. Later, Game Chasers, and peace.